And who might you be? Someone looking for information on the Suicide Squad. As am I. Brainiac would be very interested in meeting you.
Hey everyone, so turns out, like many of you, Brainiac saw the Gotham Knights video in his recommended page on YouTube. So, he told me that if I reviewed Suicide Squad and gave it a okay rating, he wouldn't assimilate me. So, I guess let's get into it. Oh, God. So, Suicide Squad. It's been a hot topic for the last week or so now, and honestly, before it came out, it wasn't really on my radar. Last year, I had seen the gameplay trailers, and to be honest, I thought it looked pretty cool, but I didn't really pay it much attention after that. So I was actually pretty surprised to see that it was coming out 2 days after releasing my Gotham Knights video. I had been working on that video in December of 2023 and released it on January 31st of 2024. I didn't even realize that the game was coming out, and by sheer coincidence, I had put myself in the position of having to make this video. Just would have felt wrong not to, you know? So, I grabbed a buddy who was willing to sacrifice his weekend to play this game with me for this video. Obviously, by now, pretty much everyone agrees that the game is bad, right? I mean, I went into the game completely expecting to hate it and have to slog through it. The only saving grace I could see was that the campaign was only about 10 or so hours, much shorter than Gotham Knights, and it'd be just short enough to force myself through. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. I'll touch more on my thoughts of the game later in the video, but for now, let's just jump right in. Just wanted to chime in and say, spoiler warning. We do cover the entire story in this video, so if you do not want to be spoiled, skip to the 40-minute mark. Otherwise, enjoy. The game opens on this floating rubble in the void, panning down onto Deadshot. This is the tutorial area. We learn the basics of each character and their movement and combat styles while making our way individually to a specific location for the characters to meet up. One thing to throw in here, obviously, as this is a tutorial, we get to learn the controls, and they are a little clunky at first. I did try playing with a controller as the game suggests upon booting, however, I actually found it to be a little bit more clunky than keyboard and mouse controls, so I'll be sticking with those. The weird thing about the controls is that there isn't a sprint in the game, but the movement ability is bound to shift, or R1 on controller. So, for example, throwing Captain Boomerang's boomerang in order to speed force to a location requires you to look at a location and press shift. It's a little weird and clunky at first. A minor thing, but it's just what jumped out at me. Once the squad meets up, we are then thrown into a combat scenario where we kill hordes of enemies until the game tells us we need to escape. We then get a flashback to 7 days prior, where we are shown Agent Waller and her team Argus arriving at Arkham Asylum to recruit Boomerang, Deadshot, Harley, and King Shark. They're all strapped to a table as Waller explains she only needs one of them and places a bomb injector on the table. The squad breaks free and all start fighting with each other in a freeze-frame montage of them injecting the bombs into each other's heads. Now that they've enlisted each other into Waller's control, they now have no choice but to help her or have their heads explode. The squad all gets tased and passes out, and when they wake up they're on a train heading somewhere unknown. They make a crash entrance and blow up a wall and find themselves at the Hall of Justice, or the lobby of the Hall of Justice. This is where my friend and I were able to join together, so meet Supervisor. The area of the Hall of Justice we're in is like a visitor's area, a place for tours to come through with a museum-like display of different gadgets the League has collected over the years. This is where all the characters get their movement abilities. Boomerang grabs a Speed Force Gauntlet, allowing him to move around quickly like the Flash. Harley grabs a grappling hook and Batwing to swing from. Deadshot gets a jetpack, and King Shark glows. We head up to the roof of the Hall of Justice and head outside, and we are immediately shown why the squad was assembled and deployed for the mission. Outside, we see Metropolis in a state of crisis as Brainiac is actively assaulting the city, overseeing it from his ship floating just above. Waller informs us we are the first people to make it into Metropolis alive since the invasion began. They airdrop a transponder we have to activate for the next part of the mission. It's at this point we notice something, weird. If you watch the gameplay here, you can see our party consists of Boomerang, King Shark, and 2 Deadshots. One is Supervisor wearing the prisoner outfit, and the other wearing the actual Deadshot armor we haven't unlocked yet story-wise. Even weirder, we are both able to play as Deadshot during this bug. This is an issue that will return a few times throughout our playtime, with the game copying different characters whenever it happens. It's weird. Anyways, we go and activate the transponder, and when we do, we are captured by the already assimilated Green Lantern. He flies us around the city, explaining that Brainiac is looking to transform the populace and the planet into a new planet Kolu, Brainiac's previous homeworld. He then takes us up to a nearby rooftop to inform Brainiac of our presence in Metropolis. While Green Lantern taunts us, the Flash arrives, interrupting him, and they both run off somewhere else to fight. Our new objective is to find Flash and bring him back to Waller before he is corrupted. Boomerang can use his Speed Force Gauntlet to track the Flash, and we begin our pursuit. It's at this time Supervisor had crashed back to desktop, so we had to take a moment to get set up again. Once back in, we track down the Flash, who's in the middle of a fight with a giant Green Lantern. Flash gets thrown across the city again, and when we find him, he is badly injured. We take him into a nearby building to hide from Brainiac's army, and then we have a chillingly wonderful introduction sequence to Batman. Say what you want about the game, but this whole sequence is so well done. While hiding inside, we hear screams coming from the back of the building as 2 people come rushing out. One gets grabbed by Batman, who then drops him into a crumpled heap on the ground while the other catches a batarang to the damn neck. Then, Batman appears, eyes glowing purple as he cuts the lights, and we now have to find a way out in the darkness. This whole sequence flips the script, and we are now the grunts from the Arkham series being hunted by Batman. We each slowly get picked off one by one until all the members of the squad are down. As Batman picks up Harley's gun and attempts to kill her, Flash arrives and slaps the bullet away from her. Batman beats Flash to a bloody pulp and then calls Brainiac, who beams them away. Waller, infuriated that we failed to save the Flash, tells us to meet back at the Hall of Justice, our new headquarters. When we arrive, we meet Wonder Woman, who easily beats all of our asses and then flies away. Waller then officially informs the team that their objective is to
kill the Justice League.
I'm just kidding. I made that title screen. When we were playing, we were joking that there should be one there. I think I put more effort into this video than they did into the game.
We get geared up, and now we are mostly done with the intro. It must be said, at this point, I had gone into the game expecting to hate it, as that's what all of the reviews have been saying lately, though up till now, I was actually having fun with the game, and it wasn't just because it was co-op either. By this point, we were actually a little annoyed that we were getting disconnected or crashing. Rather, I was having fun with the characters and introduction so far. Even the gameplay was starting to feel alright, and the game is surprisingly funny at times. It's not all hits, there's a few dud jokes here and there that sound like something I'd write, but other times the jokes are legitimately funny and had us chuckling in Discord. There's a lot of filler in this game, however, as because it's a live service loot shooter, there are quite a few characters and missions that don't really add to the overall story and instead are just there to set up for different crafting, re-rolling, and vendor stations around your base. The first of these recruited is the Penguin, who has an actually pretty silly recruitment into the team that is one of those aforementioned funny moments. We then meet Gizmo, who is creating vehicles for the team, and vehicle combat in this game is a thing, but it doesn't feel great, and I actually prefer not to use them. They don't deal as much damage as your standard weapons, and it's hard to align the gunner and the ship with multiple enemies, as the gunner on the top can't get line of sight on the enemies below, like a flat horizontal line in front of the vehicle. The squad, granted a small amount of freedom to wander the city, then decides they want to head to LexCorp and try to get the bombs in their heads removed, so we head over there, clear out the surrounding enemies, and inside we find a scientist that can help us. He takes us to the one-of-a-kind patented bomb removal device, and just before we can get the bombs removed, Waller shoots the scientist in the leg. She then starts to interrogate him on Lex Luthor's location when the man himself appears on the monitor behind her, taunting us. He then decides to purge LexCorp of information and starts deleting his databases. To top it off, he blows up the scientist's head right in Waller's face. She goes on a rage-induced tantrum and destroys the bomb remover while simultaneously shit-talking us. While in the lab, Harley notices that Poison Ivy was held here as her plants are in a nearby containment cell, though we aren't sure how she's still alive as she died in Arkham Knight. We're sent to track her down and find her, and when we do, we see that she is a child now. Okay. Yeah. Okay, sure. What? I guess she's like a seed that was left from Ivy's plants or something. I don't think I missed any explanation. She just says that her pheromones remember Harley, and that's about it, so sure. Whatever, screw it. Boomerang already injected her with a bomb using his Speed Force gauntlet, so welcome to the team, kid. We meet up back at the Hall with Ivy and Penguin, who enable us to add afflictions to our weapons, like elemental modifiers. We end up tracking down Lex Luthor and somehow fall into his trap with so much ease it surprises Lex when he reveals himself.
Did that to catch one of you at most.
Lex, we've been known to exceed expectations.
He talks more shit and then flies off. However, as he's about to leave, there's a blur and his suit spins around. When he turns back towards us, we see that Lex is gone, having been ripped from his suit in a horrifyingly jarring twist. Seriously, this is like something out of The Boys, and to be honest, I am here for it. Deadshot decides it's a good idea to mail Flash a bullet.
Did you get him?
And then he appears next to us on the rooftop.
Really? Why don't you just mail me the bullet?
He summons Brainiac's ship to create a cannon emplacement, and atop it rests a shipping container that Lex Luthor has been imprisoned in. We have a decent little boss fight with the cannon, and the shipping crate falls to the ground. There's no way Lex is alive, right? We open the container to find, oh, it's Joe Rogan, apparently. Flash returns and mocks us some more before attempting an attack on Lex, who uses a device to nullify Flash's connection to the Speed Force. We take this opportunity to unload our weapons towards him, but he survives and rips out Lex Luthor's heart, killing him. There's a small fight with the Flash here, but he utterly trounces us, and Wonder Woman comes to our aid, using her lasso to try and bring Flash to consciousness. He tells her that the only way to stop them is to kill them before running away. Wonder Woman throws us inside the shipping container and takes us to the Daily Planet, where we meet Lois Lane on a TV. This never comes up again. That's it. Don't worry about it. With Lex Luthor dead and Flash still alive, we head back to Waller with our tails between our legs. We meet Toyman knocking on the door of the hall, and Boomerang hilariously just injects him with a bomb, and now he's part of the team. Toyman helps us by creating copies of Lex Luthor's device called the Speed Force Coupler that disrupts the Flash's connection to the Speed Force, making his movements slower and easier to hit. With the decouplers in hand, it's now time to take on the I'm sorry? What do you mean get in the spirit of things?
The spirit of the Justice League.
No, that's stupid. It's already enough that you're making me do this video. I don't want... Okay, fine. I'll do it. Jesus. We arrive at the site of the boss arena and send out a broadcast, taunting the Flash and luring him to our location. We fight him in an alright, if not repetitive, boss fight, and then we finally secure the kill. Our first League member down. Alright, so now is where I need to chime in. This is one of the more controversial scenes. People aren't happy with really any of the hero deaths, but this one is the second most hated one. After killing him, Boomerang stands over his body, whips out his dick, and attempts to piss on his body. Deadshot goes to stop him and then is stunned by the apparent massive size of Boomerang's boomerang, and Harley even gives the captain a salute. All I'll say is that while it didn't have a negative effect for me, I understand why some people would be left with a sour taste after seeing their favorite superhero killed, talked down to, and pissed on. The game definitely could have been more respectful in this regard. That being said, Boomerang as a character is a scumbag. He's meant to be horrible. Towards the beginning of the game, he's even drawing a picture of himself pissing on Flash's body. I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with the scene. However, for me, it's not the biggest offender. We'll get to that one. After Flash is killed, Brainiac's ship powers up and one of the arms start moving towards us, powering up and firing a laser into the ground, for some reason. Green Lantern arrives and starts his shit-talking, and to escape from him, we jump into this laser coming out of the arm tentacles from the ship. Apparently, this beam was creating a link to another world, and we end up in a parallel universe of Metropolis. This does bring up a question for me, personally. What was Brainiac doing? Was he trying to destroy the area? If so, why weren't we destroyed? Was he trying to just reclaim Flash's body? And if that's the case, isn't there a less complicated way than to pass him through a parallel dimension to get him back to the ship? You have another one? Fine. Alright, sure. Is this a CGI mask? I thought we learned our lesson on this one! Anyways, once inside the parallel dimension, the trackers we used to find Lex earlier start activating again. We follow them and meet an alternate reality Lex Luthor who explains that he had been working with our Lex to try and stop Brainiac. We help Lex 2 Electric Boogaloo open a portal back to our world and arrive back at LexCorp. Once back in our world, Waller contacts us demanding to know why we lost contact. Lex 2 Lex Harder warns us not to tell Waller of his existence and to not trust her, as in his dimension she went mad and got the squad killed. He tasks us with installing a device inside the Hall of Justice so he can gain access to their systems. We meet up with Waller back at the Hall and get an alert that Brainiac's ship is powering up a massive amount of energy. Upon heading towards the ship to figure out what's going on, we are intercepted by a group of enemies genetically infused with Flash's powers. Turns out the surge of energy was caused by Brainiac creating these creatures. After killing these Flash clones, Liquid Lex informs us that he's found something inside Wayne Bank that could help us take down Green Lantern, so we make our way there to retrieve it. Inside, we find Bruce's personal vault where we see Wonder Woman forging kryptonite onto her shield. She politely excuses herself past us and leaves while we search for the item Lex sent us here for. That item is in fact Yellow Lantern Corps tech that Bruce conveniently had 4 of for us to attach to our guns. Then we make our way to Green Lantern's boss arena and... Okay, this fight is pretty dope. I can't even lie. Don't get me wrong, it still suffers from the same repetitiveness the Flash fight did. However, because of the visuals and more interruptible mechanics, the repeated mechanics didn't hold it back. At least not as much. For me, this is the best fight in the game, hands down. That being said, it's not all good. At this point, we've been starting to see and understand why people are getting upset with the hero deaths in this game. You see, to put it bluntly, Green Lantern went out like a bitch. Just laying there while the squad talks shit to him before shooting him. While this didn't exactly put me off from enjoying the fight or anything, it did bring to my attention 2 different things. The first being, I was pretty underwhelmed with this death cutscene. In fact, looking back at this point, I was also disappointed with the Flash's death cutscene. Not even that Boomerang was going to try and piss on him, more so that it was anticlimactic. After the boss fight, he was just dead. And this will be a running theme. The other thing that I came to realize was that even though I was personally not put off by his death, I can see how other people would be upset. We will go more in depth on this later, but I wanted to address this before we get too far in. After killing Green Lantern, yet another divisive moment happens, that being, King Shark puts on the Green Lantern ring to use its power to break through the shield surrounding Brainiac's ship. Okay, hear me out for 1 second. I've said before I'm not a comic guy. I've read a few comics and manga, but I would by no means consider myself a comic book fan. So to me, this whole sequence is pretty fucking awesome. Like, holy shit, look at this megalodon. Oh my god, it's so cool!
That being said, there are some people claiming that it's not comic accurate as the ring has to choose you. This is one of the few times I will offer some form of defense of this game. However, if I'm wrong here, please correct me in the comments. My understanding is that the ring does not necessarily have to choose you, as there is a Green Lantern comic series where Hal Jordan becomes Parallax and goes around the cosmos killing other lanterns and taking and using their rings. Now, like I said, this isn't completely within my realm of knowledge. This is just what I found while doing some research for this video, so it's possible that I'm mistaken. Either way, that's just my 2 cents. I thought this scene was fun. Ridiculous? Absolutely, but fun nonetheless. After the King Lantern cutscenes, Waller announces her betrayal and launches a nuke at Brainiac's ship with us in range. The squad watches the missile rocket towards the ship while they prepare for their imminent demise, when suddenly it stops dead. The rocket begins to lift slightly, revealing that Superman has entered the battle. Wonder Woman arrives, and after Superman throws the nuke back towards its origin, the two begin a big DBZ-style brawl around the city. At the same time, Waller's convoy comes under attack by Brainiac's soldiers. The squad, understandably, tells her to fuck off. However, Waller has a MacGuffin and says that her vitals are linked to the bombs in the squad's neck, so we, have to help her. After saving her, we have to escort her back to the Hall of Justice in an ice cream truck Boomerang found as a getaway vehicle. This escort mission could have been cool, except it's stupidly done, as even though we are in the middle of a meta-human anime fight and trying to escape this ever-increasingly hostile territory, Waller decides to drive at 5 miles per hour. To make it even dumber, once we arrive at the Hall of Justice, it seems like it's implied that she's driving so fast she loses control and crashes straight into the wall outside the hall. What? Anyways, Superman and Wonder Woman end up bringing their fight to the front steps of the Hall of Justice, mere feet away from us. The squad kind of just watches as Wonder Woman struggles against the might of Superman until finally Harley does something. The distraction she causes allows Wonder Woman to stab a shard of kryptonite into Superman's chest. He stumbles for a second before unleashing laser beams point blank at Wonder Woman. She attempts to block, but after a moment the beams plunge straight through her chest, cooking her inside out. Superman turns his attention to us, but can't ignore the damage he sustained and retreats back to Brainiac's ship. The squad goes to Wonder Woman to aid her, though it's clear she will soon succumb to her wounds. This is the one good death in the game, and ironically, it's not even the result of you, the player. I'm not exactly sure why Wonder Woman had the only respectful death in the game. Wonder Woman, in her dying breaths, tells the squad that she had not worked with them as she believed them unable to accomplish anything, but begs that they prove her wrong before slowly burning to ash. After this, the squad and Waller meet inside the Hall of Justice, unsure of what their next steps should be, as Superman, by all accounts, should have died from his severe injuries due to kryptonite. As they sit there brooding, Lex Luthor chimes in to the squad's comms and, using Boomerang to keep his existence hidden from Waller, explains to the team that the kryptonite likely did not have an effect, as whatever Brainiac's assimilation entails likely altered his genetics. The solution? Capture the final remaining League member, Batman.
Finally, I am the knight. I am Batman.
Oh god. Alright, I won't do that. We track him down with Poison Ivy using her plants to search for a bat cave underground, and Gizmo creating an AliExpress Batmobile that can spoof Wayne Tech signals, allowing us to access Batman's secret lair. Okay, so before we go further, this is the beginning of the final act of the game, and it's also the portion people have the most issue with. For those out of the loop, this is not the only reason, but is the biggest reason people have been hating on this game. Once making our way into the Batcave, the squad starts their search for Batman, looking around for any sign of him. Towards the back of the cave, we find a small control room. Batman is standing inside facing a terminal.
The squad bursts in and starts unloading on the Dark Knight, attempting to get the jump on him, even though this was supposed to be a capture mission. It's then revealed that this is not the Batman we thought it was. This is in fact a recording left by the uncorrupted Batman in the event that he and/or the rest of the League were compromised. It details how to kill each member of the League and their weaknesses. The recording was left for Robin to recruit Nightwing, Batgirl, and Red Hood to take down the League, though unfortunately the squad notices Robin's bloody mask laying on the floor nearby. As the recording begins to cover advice on how to take down Superman, the Batcave around us begins to rip apart, spiraling into the void as the squad is left standing in a swirling vortex of black and orange. Those of you who played the Arkham games will recognize this as Scarecrow's fear toxin. The squad gets split up and must navigate an all-right horror-inspired scenario to try and vent the fear from the Batcave. The Batman statues are very much the same Weeping Angel-inspired ones from the end of Arkham Knight. They pretty much just reuse this scenario, and it's not all that amazing. What's worse is that while the individual scenarios don't take that long, it took way longer than necessary as you have to play through all 4 characters, and even though there were 2 of us, we had to wait and then spectate the other taking control of the next character. Anyways, once split up, Harley radios to the rest of the squad and tells them to mix specific chemicals located around the Batcave hallucination. Once we get around to playing as her, we learn that she had spent time creating her own version of the fear gas, and once the team fully mixes it, we are able to turn the tables on Batman, forcing him into the hallucination as well. We then jump into the worst boss fight in the game. This whole fight consists of shooting at a giant shadowy fear hallucination version of Batman from a single platform and dodging one of 3 attacks: a platform bombardment, a horizontal slash from the left or right side, and an orb that Batman summons that you must shoot before it reaches the platform. That's it. This fight is boring as shit. And anyone that really wants to defend it and say something like, oh, well, maybe there's more mechanics or it's harder on a higher difficulty. Well, we've been playing on the hardest difficulty since we started the game. This fight is just bad. It looks very cool, but mechanically it is inferior to the other fights in this game. Anyways, we fill Batman up with bullets and he falls to the ground. Apparently, the thousands of bullets we pumped into him didn't kill him, though he is near death. Once again, this is a capture mission. So we put him in a PAL sphere and take him back to LexCorp so that Lex with a Vengeance can run his tests. Brainiac didn't have a good costume, so he just gave me the logo and some duct tape. Anyways, the result of those tests is a golden kryptonite that he has forged into bullets. The squad also, hilariously, just kind of duct tapes that shit all over themselves. So, now for the biggest and worst part of the game. In order to lure Superman out to fight them, Harley decides to take Batman to the park where the fight will take place. The squad sets him on a bench, and Harley proceeds to monologue a bunch of boring shit and talks down to Batman. Listen, I get it, she's a villain, she's supposed to hate Batman and all that, I understand. But this whole game, she's been having this back and forth mentally with herself over trying to become a new person and understand that the Joker and some of the other villains were actually horrible, both to her and to those around them. I would think that she wouldn't harbor the same resentment towards Batman, at least not as much as she would have. Now, as for Batman going out like a bitch here, as mentioned with the other heroes, it's slightly more understandable that he can't fight back in this moment. I've seen a lot of people complain that he just sits here while they shit-talk him, waiting for them to kill him. I agree it's shitty, and the whole scenario probably should have been done differently. But it wasn't. So, with the context of him being riddled with bullets and also, unlike the other heroes, being just a guy, it makes sense he wouldn't have the energy to move. You can even see him fall forward and King Shark lifting him back up just a few seconds before Harley eventually kills him. That being said, even though in this specific context it makes sense, every scene with Batman starting from the fear scenario probably should have been redone to be more engaging, interesting, and more worthy of the character that is not just Batman, but Arkham Batman. The other unfortunate point is that this is Kevin Conroy's final performance. With that in mind, however, while it is a shame, I don't fault the devs for that. Kevin went into the role knowing full well what it was, and the devs aren't able to just redo his voice lines now that he's dead. What's recorded is what we have. There's no going back on it now. It's very unfortunate, but to mourn it like Kevin didn't know what he was recording is a bit silly. I've spent 3 days while writing this script just mulling over my thoughts and how I should write all this, as it is important. However, maybe I'm just not critical enough, but I couldn't bring myself to get truly mad over any of this. Saddened, yes, but not because Batman was dead, but because of how the entire thing came to be. It's wholly unfortunate all around. I don't fault anyone for being angered and put off from the game because of those decisions, but I do urge you not to go online and start sending hate or death threats towards anyone on the team at Rocksteady like a small minority of people have been doing. No mistreatment of any fictional character deserves that type of reaction. Now that all that's been said, we can move back to the game itself. After Batman's death, Brainiac's ship starts powering up and Superman arrives quickly to the scene. He taunts us before the big finale fight starts. This fight. It's rough. I understand why we have to have the fight like this. In all actuality, Superman could move faster than any member of the Suicide Squad and kill them with the exception of King Shark, who could at least take a few punches from the Man of Steel. Gameplay-wise, however, that obviously wouldn't make for a fun time. Though it's still a bit underwhelming just fighting a Superman that only blows cold air, shoots lasers, and occasionally tries to hit you with a helicopter. We eventually shoot enough golden kryptonite bullets at him to kill him, and he's dead. Just like that. No final words, nothing. Once again, an extremely anticlimactic ending to a character. The squad celebrates their victory and jumps in the air in a freeze-frame high five. Though it's not actually a freeze frame. Brainiac appears, revealing that he has frozen them in place and begins taunting them. Then teleports the squad back to his ship where he prepares to assimilate them, promising them their desires as his tentacle monsters start preparing for the hentai spin-off game. Just then, we are teleported back to LexCorp as Lex Reforged had locked onto us to save us in the nick of time. Turns out, Brainiac is persistent across 13 different parallel universes, and in order to fully be rid of him, the squad must kill Brainiac in all of them. So, we do some repeat missions we've already done to obtain enough of a specific material to open a portal and take on Brainiac. This fight was disappointing as well. They could have done some cool shit with Brainiac taking control of different machinery and having to fight against his ship or something along those lines, but instead, they just took the Flash fight and gave those mechanics to Brainiac. It's completely uninspired and boring. After defeating Brainiac, we bring him back to our universe so we can stab him with a data spike to obtain information from the network Brainiac uses to connect himself to all the parallel universes. However, we're not going after the other 12 Brainiacs yet, as those will be coming in future updates as part of seasonal content. So, instead, the current endgame is simply to run around and complete the same 3 or 4 missions you've already done to obtain a currency you can pay to go into a portal and do more of the same type of missions you did to get the currency. And to top it off, there's only one gear set with a specific playstyle that, guess what? If you don't like that set, you're just out of luck. There are some other gear sets you can get from side missions that you can earn while going through the story, but they're basic in comparison to this one. So really, there's currently only one endgame gear set in a game designed to be about getting better and better gear. This is trash. I can't emphasize how disappointing the endgame is. Truly. Okay. So this is going to be a huge mixed bag and is really going to boil down to player preference in terms of gameplay. Suicide Squad, for better or worse, is a loot shooter. I personally love loot shooters. I'm an MMO gamer first and foremost and thoroughly enjoy the infinite loot grind in games. That being said, I hate and don't understand hero-based multiplayer games in general, and that goes doubly so when that's applied to loot shooters. Let me explain. If I'm playing an online multiplayer game and one hero has a moveset that I enjoy, but someone else wants to play that hero, then one of us is screwed. This is even more of an issue in a game where they want you to spend hundreds, even thousands of hours playing and grinding out gear for said character. I'd much rather have a generic character creator and decide for myself which powers and abilities I want to go for, independently of whatever choices my friends make. That simple fact alone will likely keep my friends and I from playing this long term, as I know multiple of my friends will want to play the same character, as a lot of us have very similar playstyles. This isn't a critique of just this game either, I felt the same with Avengers as well. As for core gameplay, I mostly played Boomerang, as his quick run and gun playstyle matched what I usually try to play in games. I did try out Deadshot, Harley, and King Shark for a few side objectives, and while I wasn't as into them, they all felt pretty good. That being said, I was extremely bad at Harley's grappling hook movement ability for some reason, but King Shark essentially plays like what you would expect a Hulk game to play like, and Deadshot allows for some slower paced sniper playstyle, with his jetpack allowing him to hover at different vantage points the other characters would only be able to move through. Boomerang for me felt the best, as he is fast-paced and chaotic, and while some will probably have an issue with the delay on his boomerang, I actually came to enjoy the feeling of throwing it and timing my movements. Gunplay is entirely dependent on which weapon you pick. In my opinion, the pistols and SMGs did not feel very fun to play with, but the shotguns, sniper rifles, assault rifles, and miniguns all felt pretty good to me. Combat flows pretty nicely once you really get into the groove of it, however, and during the more chaotic missions, I was actually having a decent bit of fun. Speaking of missions, mission variety and design is, pretty bland, for both side missions and main story missions, as well as repeatable activities found around the world. There are only a handful of mission types in the game: rescue people, protect plants, escort trucks, and kill enemies, with the latter obviously being a part of all the other mission types. All of these do have differing modifiers, for example, one being enemies can only take damage when getting critical hits, and all other damage will heal them. That's fine and all, but even with modifiers, it gets extremely repetitive, extremely fast. One more than mildly annoying thing we found while playing is that after each mission, you get taken out of the game with a big mission complete screen and have to tab through all the rewards after being forced to watch a cutscene showing who received the top score during the mission. It sucks because the game is clearly still rendered behind this overlay. It doesn't move the characters or anything, it just pops up. They really should have just done a little mission complete badge at the top of the screen, popped up your rewards on the side, and then highlighted the top performer on the party list on the right side of the screen. Performance-wise, the game actually isn't that bad. I had about a solid 100 FPS on PC with all the settings at max without ray tracing, and about 80 FPS with ray tracing. The exception to this was when it rains. For whatever reason, when it rains, the game tanks hard from 100 FPS to between 50 and 80 depending on what's happening on screen. Overall, stability of the game is mixed. I personally experienced only one hard freeze that never recovered and forced me to Alt F4 the game and reboot. However, Supervisor experienced 8 total crashes back to desktop during our playtime. Also of note, the game would randomly completely lock up and freeze for both of us for between 5 and 10 seconds before returning. This would happen on average once every couple of hours, and as these weren't leading to crashes, they were more on the minor side of things, though definitely should be fixed. We didn't experience a plethora of bugs during our playtime, but what few bugs we did encounter, we encountered frequently. I covered it earlier, but we had copies of the different characters on our team multiple times throughout our gameplay, and Supervisor also had a weird issue occur twice where his character would not stop melee attacking no matter what, and both times was only resolved by the mission completed screen. We also, on a couple of occasions, saw copies of characters like the Penguin standing inside of himself during rescue missions while inside the bus, and the final thing I noticed was the lip syncing during specific moments with characters on monitors was completely off. The one and only partially game-breaking bug we experienced was that during one of the side missions, a specific enemy we needed to kill died outside the bounds of the mission area, and we were unable to loot the item we needed from its body. It was frustrating, but after letting ourselves die to fail the mission, we were able to reset it and continue our progress. Overall, Suicide Squad is even more of a mixed bag than Gotham Knights was. There's some good here, covered by a lot of dumb choices and questionable writing. I don't believe it to be the egregious, messy cash grab that some people are shouting from the rooftops. Those opinions are valid, but I do remember Gotham Knights getting a similar treatment before Suicide Squad came out, and now if you look at the comments on my video about the game, there's so much praise for it you'd think it's always been loved. I'm not saying Suicide Squad is going to be beloved when the next game comes out, but I do believe that to some degree, disappointment hit people hard with this game. Couple that with a lot of people not actually playing it or giving it a chance and simply hearing their favorite YouTuber tell them that the game sucks and isn't worth their time. If you look at the user reviews on Metacritic, valid criticisms are mixed in with incoherent memes and shitposts, whereas on Steam, where users are required to own the game, it's sitting at very positive. Now, I am aware of the supposed deleting of reviews on Steam. However, having checked the Steam store page daily to keep up on the user rating for this review, I personally never saw the rating waver or the review numbers dip, and I can't find anything showing proof of this happening. I do know that Steam limits how much bad reviews can affect a game's rating within a short time span to avoid review bombing, so it's possible this happened. There is insufficient evidence to show one way or the other. Obviously, the player count isn't healthy. The game's peak concurrent player count was only around 12,000 at launch. That's pathetic for a AAA game. I think part of this comes down to varying issues. The game was delayed multiple times, and that already sours people's opinions on games, and to top it off, many other YouTubers were shitting on it during the early access period, mainly for story issues, and that's perfectly valid. However, I think a lot of people heard those opinions and immediately accepted that it's the worst game ever made. It's not, though. Don't get me wrong, it's not amazing either, but for what it's worth, Supervisor and I had a fair bit of fun with it. We won't be playing it for months or years or anything, but we'll probably go through and finish the endgame. Outside of certain controversial story moments, the game is quite funny. There were multiple times we were laughing at whatever lovable, stupid thing King Shark was doing, or Boomerang and Deadshot's banter. The story was also pretty engaging and interesting. I understand people's criticisms of how they handled the characters' deaths, and as we covered earlier, I agree that they could have been handled better, but I just don't feel that it's all that black and white. The story has its ups and downs, and there's definitely a lot of blunders, but I personally found it to be much better than I was expecting going into it. That doesn't mean the story is good, but keep in mind, I heard all the reviews and hatred towards the game before playing it and was fully expecting to hate it and make a meme review about this game, so you can imagine the surprise and fear I had when I realized I wasn't going to be able to make a video taking the majority opinion and saying I hated it and that there's nothing redeemable, as that's not entirely true. Something else worth noting while making this video, they did a sneak preview of the first season of content, and I hate it. This guy, him. Yeah. This guy isn't Joker. I actually would have preferred Jared Leto's Joker to this shit smear. I hate him so much, it instantly killed any interest I had in future characters. If you aren't familiar, this is an alternate reality version of Joker we likely will meet in one of the parallel universes we go into to fight Brainiac. The fact that they would even consider adding in an alternate reality Joker into a game that is a follow-up to the Arkham series with Mark Hamill's excellent Joker performance is actually the biggest insult they could do after the criticisms the game has already been facing post-launch. It comes off as tone-deaf and like the devs are on a completely different page from the players. Alright, so now that we've covered the whole story and gameplay and taken a deeper look at what the game gets right and what the game fumbles entirely, you may be wondering what rating I'd give it. So, I'll give it a rating, but here's the thing. I don't think of myself as a reviewer. I just like to talk about my thoughts on a game and make videos about it. However, for this game, I feel like I can't just say it's bad, it's good, or even it's okay, as there are so many variables at play here. Starting off, do not pay full price for this game.
Even many of the positive reviews for this game on Steam echo this same sentiment. For the record, I didn't even pay full price for this game. I got it on the Humble store at 20% off the day before full release, and even that is too little of a discount. If you plan to play this game solely for the story and nothing else, I give it a 5 out of 10. The story, regardless of whether you like what's being told or not, is entirely too short. Supervisor and I were able to clear the entire main story, minus the endgame, and all the side objectives in about 15 hours total, including hitting max level and entering into the Paragon level up system. If you plan on playing through the story alone, however, I would knock it down another point to a 4 out of 10. While I had fun playing through it with a friend, I don't think I would have had the same level of enjoyment had I played solo. Finally, if you're like me and enjoy loot shooter gameplay, well, unfortunately, this isn't really a good loot shooter. At least, not yet, anyway. I've had fun with this game, and really, I'm disappointed that the endgame is so incredibly weak, as I actually really enjoy the movement and combat, and if there was actually a sizable endgame, I'd be playing this game all the time. But really, there's nothing here. As a loot shooter, what it was designed to be, I'd give it a 3 out of 10. There's barely anything to do once you hit the endgame, and to top it off, there is literally nothing new inside the gameplay loop once you clear the campaign. All in all, Suicide Squad has too many blunders that almost entirely negate the few good design choices that were made, and it unfortunately adds up to a game that, while I enjoyed some parts of it and did have fun, I can't recommend it. Perhaps over time the story develops more through their post-release content, but even then, you shouldn't have to either wait or pay more money to get a fully completed story from a game that the majority don't even have fun playing. It's a shame because, well, as I said in the beginning, I wasn't even paying attention to when Suicide Squad was releasing. I still don't like to see games fail, especially from a developer that has made such great games in the past. I hope they turn it around, but ultimately, by the time they do, pretty much everyone will have forgotten about the game. Maybe eventually, we can get a Justice League game people actually want. So that's it, guys. That's my video on Suicide Squad. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the... What? What are you doing? I'm sorry, I didn't give it a good review. I couldn't. No! Oh no! So, is this, permanent? Or... Alright.